will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 more talents. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of whose servants came and settled accounts with him. And he who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, so I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I scattered no seed, and cast the worthless servant out into the darkness, into the place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't think I did that right. Sorry.
No, I think you're right.
Can you edit all that? Yeah. Can you help me?
Sure can.
A lot of us want to give away as much money as we can, and on earth sometimes we want to hold on to it and increase it so we can give away a larger amount later. My thought is God's rate of return is much better than mine. If he increases things at 30, 40, 60, 80, 100% in his kingdom, I would be a fool not to give it to him sooner. There's 3 parts of investment. There's time, there's amount of interest, and there's the amount of the investment. The most important that we all learn in finance is time. The longer investment has to grow, the greater the potential of the amount. And I thought, well, the reverse of that is true. The sooner I get in the kingdom, the sooner it will have a chance to grow at a greater rate of return in God's kingdom than it will in my feeble 10%.
And if he's brought wealth into your life, he wants you to be generous, he wants you to take care of the people around you, the poor, your church, whoever that may be, saying that, well, when I reach a certain amount, I'll do more. Well, aren't you supposed to be that person now? We don't know that we're going to have tomorrow. And I think, as we get older, we feel that more, but it's true of younger people too. We're not promised, weeks and days and months. And so if you have a heart for something, then get in there and act on it now.
See, the parable of talents makes it really clear in Scripture where God wants us to deploy it. He wants us to put it out there. He wants it to go out to make an impact and to bring back that return and that virtuous cycle to continue. And I think we're just in one of these moments that we have to see these tools as a gift, but we also have to make sure that they don't become the things that God warns us about.
I think when we were first married, we really started out with nothing.
We got ourselves on a budget and left college, graduate school with $3,000 in our pocket and came to Dallas to work and start our family.
Even from our wedding, we tithed part of our wedding money. We supported several of our friends who went on crew staff. And so we were always involved in giving, even when we didn't have much.
I had been an associate with several really good firms in town. I wanted to be a partner, but I was told I was too young. So at 27, I started my own firm. So for 10 years, I worked really hard in building an excellent firm, of which time I was sitting at my desk at 3 o'clock in the morning crying because, not because I'd come in early, but I'd been there all night. I said, Lord, this is just too hard. I can't handle this pressure. And he seemed to give me wisdom at that time. He said, build a firm based on service, not on design quality. He said, serve people. And so that helped me flip the firm from being a design firm to being a service-oriented firm. I got an opportunity to do some work for Walmart, and it started a 30-year relationship with Walmart where in the end we had designed 8,000 projects for them in every state.
But it was just a real joy as we had more to be able to give more. And it became more of a conversation that the two of us would have.
I approached IJ and said, I'd like to transfer this annuity to you. And they said, well, we really can't accept it. Their legal department said we can't accept it unless it's redeemed because It's actually an insurance policy. It's not truly an investment account. They said, and when you do it, you'll have to pay tax on the gain. And they said, we actually suggest that maybe you bequeath that to us in your will, because then you don't have to pay the tax on it. Well, my thought was, I can't wait till I die to send this money to IJM. So we redeemed the annuity, paid the tax. I figured that God can use that money better than I can in his kingdom at a greater rate than he had to wait till I die. It's kind of like when you get on the airplane to go to heaven, you can't line your pockets with a bunch of 20s. They don't work. You have to have a currency exchange before you get on the plane. What is that currency exchange? What is the kingdom currency that we need to be able to have it effective in eternity?
I think really the core behind a lot of that is wanting to see a lot of people come to know Jesus. And if that's what our heart is, and that's where our mind is set, then why would we be putting our money aside for later on? Why not do it now? If our goal is to see people come to know the Lord, then let's get it out there where it can draw people to him.
It began to become, how can I invest in it to build God's kingdom? A time that I began to realize I really don't own anything, that God gave me everything. He gave me the ability to create wealth. He gave me the wisdom to use it, and it was his, not mine. And once I realized that, the light flipped on and says, I've got to take good care of this. I began to invest in relationships.
We met John and Andy through Crown Ministries when they were doing small short films. We knew nothing about the movie business. I mean, we go to the movies and we buy tickets. That's about the extent of our knowledge.
Found that they were some of the hardest working, most talented men in the media business. And so we took a risk on helping them out. And it wasn't just that we invested in a movie, we invested in them specifically.
We're in this sort of window of time where there's, the perception that Christian entertainment is cheesy or less than or not as good.
Hey, Scotty. Jesus, man.
I believe Christian movies are bad. And I don't mean they're so bad it's good, although there are a few of those.
Word of advice, don't start preaching around here.
I mean bad as in low quality, poor execution, and just wrong.
Budgets have gotten bigger, but the acting still remains forced, the story contrived, and production value low.
I see that as a businessman and an entrepreneur as a massive opportunity for a brand. There's a lot of faith history. There was a time where faith-based films were the epics and the blockbusters of the day. If you take the European art tour, there's an incredible fusion between faith and art. So we're in this ditch that we got to work our way out of. I do think it's something that we can fix and that we can improve upon and that we can reestablish our voice and culture. This is the language of the time. If we want to communicate with a generation, this is the way to do it.
Film can change the way people perceive issues.
Studies show that the movies you watch don't just affect your hobbies. They affect your career choices, your emotions, your sense of identity.
We believe that stories can really change the world.
So investing in a movie is a way of telling the opportunity to tell a very large audience a particular story. And when that story includes a faith element, it's a big opportunity to provide a testimony that's very powerful that can help draw people to Christ.
I didn't see the 15-year plan when I invested with it. I saw nothing but fog ahead. And so I stepped out in faith because they were faithful.
The second thing that I've been really encouraged by is the number of people in that generation of creators, those who are democratizing storytelling, who are unabashed and unafraid to lean into their faith and the values of their faith, even as they hold themselves to the highest standards of excellence.
I love the Erwin brothers. They were some of the first filmmakers to say, in filmmaking, faith-based films is not a genre, but if you make a really high-quality movie that is in the right genre that audiences are seeking to be entertained by, then you can embed a faith-based message.
It's my belief if you make really excellent movies that have a moral content to them, then you'll have a huge audience. And they call them crossover movies and all that, but I just say they're good movies. Everybody wants to see a good movie. They want to be entertained. We wanted initially to build projects that had redemption, forgiveness, and reconciliation in them. Every movie that they made would have those themes embedded in that.
They are duly committed to being authentically focused on the principles of their faith. They're unabashed with it, while also being dedicated to their craft. Like, I want to watch this. I don't feel like I have to watch this out of guilt because I'm a Christian. This is amazing storytelling. And I think there's something really exciting in these creators at the top of their fields, operating at the best levels of their craft, who are unabashed to tell stories of faith right now in an era that so desperately needs those stories.
This movie is really inspirational, and you're playing Hank Erwin, a real person.
So my perspective is that if I were only given 3 to 5 years to live, how would I live? And what would I do? And so I always ask the Lord, I said, well, if I get to the end of that 3 to 5 years, can I read up my contract? So I don't expect to go anytime soon, but I live as though I could. And so it gives me a sense of urgency to do things now. And I'm so glad that Mary Dell and I invested when we did years ago in certain things because we had a sense of urgency, because of how things had grown at such an exponential rate. I couldn't do it today. If I put the money in, I wouldn't live long enough to see some of this stuff happen. So the sooner you get in the kingdom, the faster and bigger it can grow.
Did the hair on the back of your neck stand up when Raymond said, God's rate of return is much better, and I would be a fool not to give it to him sooner? This isn't finger pointing, this isn't an accusation or a guilt trip. Instead, it's an invitation for all of us to take a time out. Whether we know a lot or a little about investing, God calls us to be active and thoughtful stewards of everything he's entrusted to us. It's not just about avoiding wasteful spending or the dangers of greed. It's also about being aware of the more subtle trap. We often think that we'll give more when we make more. But as Mary Dell reminded us, we are not promised tomorrow. So how do we get going today? Tools like foundations or donor-advised funds, for example, they can be incredibly effective for managing charitable giving and aligning investments with your values. But here's the thing, it's easy to fall in the habit of treating those resources like the bigger barns, modern day ways to stockpile wealth rather than actively putting that wealth to work for God's kingdom. God has entrusted us with so much, and he invites us to be intentional in how we use it, not just to store it up, but to actively invest it in ways that make a real impact in the world around us. The Harrises pointed out that there's no time to waste. But where do we start? Our friend Greg Lenehan, chairman of the Impact Foundation, shares 4 quadrants of what makes up their faith-driven portfolio. This practical framework helps him and his family as they think about faith-driven investing, and I hope it's an encouragement to you as well. Let's watch.
It's an honor to be here today to share our faith-driven investment story with others around the world. Our journey began in 2012 after my first trip to Haiti. I returned home a changed man, questioning the priorities of my life. A few months later, we were selling the majority interest of our company. There comes a time in life when many faith-driven people ask themselves, am I doing what God has called me to do? I felt the gentle nudge that it was time for me to leave day-to-day responsibilities and lead a life that was driven more towards purpose and significance. I thought it was going to be in the nonprofit world. I quickly learned that Americans give about $450 billion in US dollars in 2019, which is about 2% of GDP, and has been the same for almost 40 years. I learned that there are 1.5 million nonprofits all going after that relatively small amount of money. I learned that the UN says we'll need $2 to $3 trillion per year to solve some of our major social issues: hunger, poverty, education, and healthcare. I learned that there are $80 to $100 trillion worth of potential investable capital if we could come up with good for-profit motives. It was very clear to me, going forward, we cannot solve our problems through grant capital. After years of prayer of how to use the capital and the talent that God had bestowed on us, we finally realized these aren't our resources. They're God's. This was a life-changing moment in our family. We now get up every morning trying to steward His resources in lieu of trying to invest ours. There's a major difference. We sat down and put on a 2x2 all of our investments. On the x-axis, we used financials, and the y-axis was social and spiritual. In the lower left-hand quadrant, we called it buried talents, where no one wants to be. In the lower right-hand, we called it capitalistic, where most, if not all, of the money in the world is invested with a financial-only lens. In the upper right-hand quadrant, which we called maximizing talents, is the ultimate quadrant, where everyone wants to be in a 2x2, the winning quadrant. And then in the upper left-hand quadrant, we noticed we had investments there. How can this be? These were investments that our family loved to share with others when they asked for examples. After much debate, we called this the spirit-led quadrant, because it's clear you can't be in this quadrant if you're looking at financial-only returns or driven. It has to be coming from the Holy Spirit. So what's different about this quadrant? We learned there are 4 things: biblical, employing the marginalized, difficulty in raising capital, and the spirit-led entrepreneurs themselves. Biblical. Our faith in God and our faith in the entrepreneur supersedes our fear in losing money or lower returns. Jesus invites us to meet Him and to join Him where He is. And we know He's with the weak, the destitute, and the lonely. And our family's concern is if we don't meet Jesus where He is, we may miss Him entirely. We're employing the marginalized. Those are people that lack employable skills. They're returning citizens. In the developing countries, they're hard to reach rural areas where they don't have job opportunities. They're the uneducated or undereducated, and they're women taking care of their families. The third area is difficulty in raising capital. Normally, you're not going to see a strategic buyer come in and buy these companies or private equity firms backing them. We do most of our investments here as loans in this quadrant. And third is the scaling is not the leading objective. Survivability and sustainability is. Next is spirit-led entrepreneurs. They care about impacting humanity way more than they do about financial returns. Most of the investments we have are with women and people of color, and that's very motivating to us. Spirit-led founders are just incredibly humble people. They just care about serving the poor, and being around them makes us better people. Most of us aren't naturally wired for this I sacrifice, we win philosophy that Praxis has presented to us. Is called the redemptive frame or the redemptive investment philosophy. You're swimming against the grain, as I would say. Most people start in that upper right-hand quadrant. It makes the most sense. And any time you slightly move to the left, it's very, very difficult. Our entire lives, we've been programmed to seek high returns, short period of time with low risk. When you're in the spirit-led investment quadrant, it's higher risk, lower returns, longer periods of time. The spirit-led quadrant, however, is the perfect place to start in our opinion. There's over $1 trillion currently in donor-advised fund and foundations. If you have passion for a specific company or industry, contact Impact Foundation and have them help you put an investment in place. In summary, we certainly don't have all the answers. We know that God equips and challenges everyone differently, and we respect that. We now look through a different lens, however, and we serve a different financial advisor. We believe that Jesus would not just invest in the upper right-hand quadrant and look for just 20% returns. We believe that faith-driven investing goes across both quadrants, and it's no longer sacrificial to our family. It feels like the right thing to do. We're targeting that half of our investments will be in the upper left-hand quadrant and half will be in the upper right-hand quadrant. In closing, we all know that grants won't solve our social issues going forward. So as Christians, if we don't invest in spirit-led companies or investments, who will?
Greg offers an insightful reminder. Faith-driven investing often leads us to make choices that might seem counterintuitive. That's because at the heart of it, we're more focused on bringing God glory than our own gain. It's a powerful shift in perspective, and it can lead us to ask, where do I want to finish? We're used to planning exit strategies for our businesses, but what about our personal finances? As faith-driven investors, we're called to be intentional and self-aware about the path we're on. This means regularly taking stock of our financial journey. Are we just building bigger barns, hoarding our resources for some future day? Or are we actively seeking ways to deploy capital today in a way that honors God's calling and makes a lasting impact in the world? It's a challenge, but also an opportunity to align our financial decisions with a higher purpose, one that extends far beyond our own financial security. Now, spend time in your group talking about this session and how it relates to the journey that you're on. Open yourselves up to learning from one another. Be honest with each other. What you get out of this time together will only be as enriching and life-giving as what you put into it. We'll see you next session.